Trump, not the West, not anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maya. Some very powerful words, but also a message that we can help as well. I think it's been a very important discussion on the law and what it's capable of bringing and its challenges as well. I think for me as a lawyer, I often have an instinct to look at the law as a beacon or as a steadfast remedy, but it's so important in order to strengthen the law and make sure that it truly and meaningfully can be used for accountability and justice and a remedy, that we have these frank discussions about where we are. So we have a little bit of time for some questions. I think we have only about 10 minutes. But there's some microphones around the room that will be brought to you. Perhaps we could take a few questions at once. When the microphone is brought to you, please introduce yourself if you have any affiliation as well, and then if the question is directed to so I see one question here on the side of the room. Do we have a microphone? Yeah.
My name is Jimmy Youssef. I'm a lawyer in London, qualified in London. I'm not Palestinian at all, but as a lawyer, I have obligation to every oppressed people on this world. With your permission, I would like to make a contribution as follows. Genocide has been taking place against the Palestinians for the last 80 years. Genocide only killing people according to the textbooks and the international law. I would like to add the following. Genocide also exists, in my opinion, against intellectuals by subjecting them to prosecution and persecution to shut them up. I am one of these victims myself. I'm English qualified solicitor because of my contribution on social media saying invaders, occupiers, rapists, murderers, and now genociders. On social media, the Solicitors Regulation Authority, following information or report from a group called National Jew, took grounded investigation. I am now currently under investigation. I resigned from this SRA, Solicitors Regulation Authority. I said, I will not recognize you as my governors anymore because I'm not one of your club members. I am free man, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I will not employ any lawyer to defend me. I will defend myself to the end. As we speak, the investigation is still on. In past now, the file has been given to the so-called judge who is going to determine the penalty I will receive, if any. I said I'm not going to recognize anyone. The question I want to ask you is, all of us lawyers, will you accept or kindly contribute to the genocide against intellectuals, especially lawyers who criticize the invasion, occupation of the Zionists?
Hello everyone, my name is Sam. I am Falishtini from the West Bank. My question is, with all this international law, and we know not many international countries are abided by, which is a joke at the moment, as a British citizen, as we're standing and going on the streets, shouting out Lami and Sama of Free Palestine, what can we do to impose the international law? Because we know that Sama and Lami are complicit in the genocide. And actually, when Netanyahu stood on the platform and said thank you to Sama for his support, he actually condemned him in the court. What can I do apart from just shouting at them because actually they don't listen, I don't care about our individual liberty? Thank you.
working, and then I'm a very French engineer, militant, with knowledge of the Middle East in the 56 years, the whole Middle East, and also recently filmmaker. My question will be to Professor Neve Gordon. We know that Israeli forces identified the location of everybody by their cell phones. So if the militant is speaking in his own apartment at night, is it a military target? I think this is the question. Because they have found a lot of by this process, they have found a lot of building because there were one or several persons inside.
We'll let Hannah go ahead and answer those questions, and we'll see if we have time for any more. Do you want to start with this?
There's a lot going on in the questions. One, regarding the last question, we have to think of the concept of people's war. The United States became the United States following the People's War. Okay? Most countries became countries following the People's War. What is a People's War? A People's War is a war where the people take part in the war, where the distinction that the laws of war require us to make between civilian and military cannot really hold. Okay? And so the question, if you're asking a question, what happens with a fighter that in the day fights and at night goes to sleep at home? So in reality, we know what happened. We know that Israel introduced for the first time, probably in 2021, but now in full use, AI to find targets. And one of the mechanisms was called Where's Daddy? And the idea was that the AI will, through probably billions of data points, identify all Hamas fighters and just, and at night, bomb their houses, and that's how the large amounts of civilians that Lena was mentioning in the first weeks was exactly targeting what you're saying. Your question is it legal? My claim in my talk is that that is a question of interpretation. I would say it's illegal, and it's very illegal. But what I'm trying to say, and I think I disagree a bit with some of the panelists here, is that we have to really think when we use the law and how to use the law in a very strategic way, because the law can be a tool against us too. Because the law often favors the powerful. And the law, and so the question is, how do we get to impose international law through our posting? I think one of the ways that the law works is that it takes away the possibility of collective action. It's the experts, it's the rule of experts, the law, okay? And we cannot, I don't think it's the role of the protesters to ensure the law. I think their role is different. I think all are different. Someone asked me at the beginning of this argument, what do you think we should do, okay? I think the legal experts have to decide when to use the law and how to use it to advance the Palestinian case. In certain instances, and as we saw with the ICC and ICJ, we have made advance. I think the role of the non-lawyers is to use their comparative advantage at the workplace, at where they are, and to create stories of resistance. And these stories of resistance might seem as if they do not have any impact, but one day they come together. And we don't know what that day is, but it will come. And suddenly the picture, the resistance becomes this whole picture, and things fall into place. And our role is to look at the situation with all its harm, see that harm, not turn away from it, and continue to resist.
Yeah, in terms of, I slightly disagree. So, you know, the question of the rule of law depends on what is the question that you are asking. If the question is, will law set us free? I mean, yeah, of course, before Trump and before Biden and before Israel existed, the answer is 99% of the time, no. If you are a sober political activist, if you are someone who has a keen analysis of the actual situation in which you operate, you neither idealize the law, nor you dismiss the law and become cynical to the extent that you disregard any role the law can play. As Neve said, now, the law can be a tool. The law is not a refuge from politics because the law itself is a side of politics, of political contestation. And yes, it can have asymmetry of power like any other field of social action. This is what the law is, a field of social action. Now, the law has its own idiosyncrasies and technicalities that we lawyers have to deal with, but at bottom, it is a social field of action. Like any other social field of action, you need to do anti-colonial mobilization in this field. Sometimes I feel that there is a schizophrenic attitude amongst many in these kind of popular dismissal views and cynical views of the law on one hand, and on the other hand, admiring Francesca Albanese or Brenna Negroli or one of these big names that we all have admired, but they are actors within the legal discourse. This is why you admire Francesca Albanese. And if you dismiss the rule of law, you are reifying law. You are thinking of it as something immutable, something coherent, something that doesn't change. It only changes, and it might change only if we mobilize it to do so. And we need to fight this fight, because law is politics by other means. And yes, we need to be strategic. Strategic lawyers do not always use the law because they want to win. Sometimes use the law knowing they are going to lose. Do you think the Center for Constitutional Rights, when they went to the courts in November 2023 against the Biden administration for genocide, were idiots? Do you not think that they knew that they are most likely to lose, but they saw value in litigating and using the law for different benefits that are not necessarily, specifically in the context in which, where politics and the media between October and December, when South Africa applied for the International Court of Justice, you couldn't crack the wall of Western wall-to-wall support in the West, neither in the media, neither in politics, nor academic. What did crack the wall? The ICJ application by South Africa. Whether they win or not, 7 years from now is immaterial. They might lose because the ICJ, this is, somewhat with disagreement maybe from what Laura said, when she said there is no debate, etc. Well, the Bosnia case and the way the ICJ treated it as a scandal. And there's like 20 years of scholarship amongst genocide study scholars and legal scholars who are criticizing the ICJ for what they did in Bosnia. And if they rule that Myanmar and Palestine are not cases of genocide, then the Genocide Convention is meaningless. But we know also who are the judges. They are judges, they are human beings, and they are appointed by states. Anyway, this is a fight we have to fight. The critical scholars in the legal tradition are never dismissive of the rule of law entirely. The problem is not, that the law does not have any role. The problem is you should not think that the law is the only or primary vehicle for advancing and upholding your rights, including freedom and justice. It is only one tool, and you need to put it within the context of a political vision. The difficulty in the Palestinian context, obviously, that we don't have a unified Palestinian body politic. We don't have a unified, legitimate will that represents the Palestinian people, whether electorally or in a revolutionary sense, and that might lead to the situation in which any legal mobilization might be ineffective. But the question, slogans like the master's tools do not dismantle the master's house are meaningless in concrete context in which the ethical agent, such as the lawyers who acted for South Africa in December, need to decide here and now what to do, knowing that the law might be limited. So we need to ask these questions in particular context and analyze it not in a revisionist history now because the law did not stop the genocide. Demonstrations did not stop the genocide, and yet we continued week after week to go to the demonstration because we need to act and we need to try. And unlike Yaniv, I think we should not leave the enforcement of law to states. We need not also reify the state. We are the state. What is the state? The state is composed of us as citizens and of our representatives. And what this genocide and other crises reveal is that we don't live in democracy. Because the majority of public opinion, even in places like Germany, were for the ceasefire for a long time, but because of the so-called constitutional democracy in the West do not reflect electoral opinion, and because the media does not reflect public opinion, we end up in a situation where there's an urgent need to democratize the political system, to democratize the media that is now corporately owned, in order to be able to bridge the gap between the Lamis and the Starmers and the officials or formal decision-making and the will of the people. And this is one way in which for the strategic vision, we can bridge the gap between what we think the law requires and the democracy. So an example of this in which the kind of civil society can be mobilized to try to enforce the law is the question of universal jurisdiction, is the question of the Hind Roger Foundation that Laura mentioned. So yes, enforcement is through activism in civil society, pressure on our electoral representatives, and trying to restructure our political systems in ways that will make them more democratic. Thank you.
Unfortunately, I think we're running short of time and we're going to have to wrap it up, but I do want to offer, if either of you have any responses to these questions before we close. Did you want to say any final remarks?
Well, I think this has been a very stimulating discussion, I would say that. And I would also say that this naming of genocide is a consequence of reclaiming the law, which is extremely important in shaping a progressive understanding of what the law requires. And as several of us have stressed, law has this dual face. It's used by states and powerful interests to oppress, to justify their own exploitative strategic interests. But the people can reclaim the law, and they are trying to do that. Palestinians have tried to do that through the BDS movement that's now 20 years old. And it is assisted by this legitimation process that these international judicial tribunals possess. And it's a struggle, as has also been emphasized, as to who prevails in the field of action as to how the law evolves, and to have a challenge, as it has been in the wake of the failures of international institutions and leading governments to stop the genocide. It has given a great deal of credibility to efforts of this sort that want to reclaim law for the causes of justice. And to reclaim law for justice is what will make law have a progressive historical influence rather than a regressive one.